Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by, and welcome to third quarter 2020 Momo Incorporated earnings conference call. And at this time, all participants are in listen-only mode. And after the speakers' prepared remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. And for your questions, you need to press *1 on your telephone keypads. And please note this conference is being recorded today. I would now like to hand the conference over to your first speaker for today, Ms. Kathy Kang. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, operator. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Momo's third quarter 2020 earnings conference call. The company's results were released earlier today and are available on the company's IR website. On the call today from Momo are Mr. Tang Yan, Executive Chairman of the Board, Mr. Wang Li, Chief Executive Officer of Momo, Mr. Wang Yu, Founder and Chief Executive Officer of Tantan, and Mr. Jonathan Zhang, Chief Financial Officer. They will discuss the company's business operations and highlights, as well as the financials and guidance. They will all be available to answer your questions during the Q&A session that follows. Before we begin, I would like to remind you that this call may contain forward-looking statements made under the Safe Harbor provisions of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. Such statements are based on management's current expectations and current market and operating conditions, and relate to the events that involve known or unknown risks, uncertainties, and other factors, all of which are difficult to predict, and many of which are beyond the company's control, which may cause the company's actual results, performance, or achievements to differ materially from those in the forward-looking statements. Further information regarding these and other risks, uncertainties, and factors is included in the company's filings with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. The company does not undertake any obligation to update any forward-looking statement as a result of new information, future events, or otherwise, except as required under law. I will now pass the call over to Mr. Tang. I will translate for him. Mr. Tang, please.
大家好，感谢参加今天的电话会。大家想必都知道，我已经辞去了Momo公司 CEO 的职位，并将继续担任董事会执行主席。今后，除有特殊事宜需要发生之外，我将不再参加公司例行的季度财报电话会。这项工作将由之前一直协助我领导公司，同时也是我最信赖的合作伙伴，公司现任 CEO 王力接任。
Good morning and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our conference call today. As many of you know, I've already resigned as the Chief Executive Officer of the company and remain as the Executive Chairman of the Board. Going forward, unless I have anything special to say, I probably won't participate in regular earnings calls on quarterly basis. The job will be passed on to the longtime deputy, also the most trusted business partner of mine, and now the new Chief Executive Officer of the company, Mr. Wang Li.
虽然不再担任 CEO， 但我仍将继续参与制定Momo集团整体战略，并指导创新业务。鉴于今后和投资人的沟通机会变少，我想借此机会和大家分享一下我对Momo既往以及未来发展道路的一些看法。
Although I'm no longer the CEO, I'm still going to be deeply involved in setting the strategic priorities and directing new product and business initiatives for the company that I built and still deeply committed to. As I'm not going to communicate with the investor community as often in the future as before, I would like to take this opportunity to share my views on what has taken Momo this far and where it is heading toward in the coming few years.
9年前，我创立Momo的初衷是帮助人们发现新朋友，拓展社交关系，并建立有效互动。这是人类的一项基本诉求。无论什么地域、什么文化背景的人都有这个需求，尤其是中国特殊的经济、社会和文化背景，使我们中国人在这方面的需求更加强烈。 现在回想起来，可以很高兴地说，我们在很多方面实现了这个初衷。每个月都有上亿人在陌陌公司旗下的平台上实现连接互动，建立浪漫的或其他意义的社交关系。但与此同时，我们在满足用户需求的方面永远都会有持续进步的空间，这是公司未来发展的原动力。如果我们能更好地解决从前无法有效解决的用户诉求，并随着用户需求的演变不断自我更新，陌陌就一定能够持续的增长。当我们看到附近的人无法满足所有用户需求时，陌陌就有了兴趣群组和附近动态。当我们看到图文信息不能满足所有用户需求时，陌陌就有了直播、短视频、社交小游戏，甚至是虚拟 KTV。当看到一些用户需要完全不同的社交环境和产品机制时，我们就把探探吸纳进公司体系。这就是陌陌在过去9年的时间里，从一个单一功能的应用软件到一家数十亿美金市值的集团公司所走过的成长历程。对创新的不懈追求和不断自我革新的勇气，将一直是我们未来推动公司增长的方式。感谢大家对陌陌团队的信任和一路以来的陪伴。接下来我将话筒交给 CEO 王丽。
9 years ago, I started Momo with an idea to help people discover new relationships, expand their social connections, and build meaningful interactions. This is a basic human demand that everybody needs regardless of geolocation and cultural background. But this is also something that we Chinese people particularly need because of the uniqueness we have here in China from economic, societal, and cultural perspective. Today, in retrospect, I'm glad to say that in so many different respects, the mission has been accomplished. Every month, more than 100 million people are connecting, interacting, and building romantic or otherwise meaningful relationships on our family of apps. At the same time, there has been and always will be opportunities for improvements in better satisfying user demands. That obviously is the ultimate driving force for the company to grow. If we can keep doing a better job in addressing the demands that we were not able to serve well in the past, and at the same time keep evolving ourselves as the users do, we will grow. When the nearby people could not meet all the user demand that we saw, we brought them interest groups and nearby posts. When text and picture-based information failed to satisfy all the user demand that we saw, we gave them live streaming, short videos, dinner party games, and even virtual karaoke. When some people wanted a completely different social context and product mechanism, we added content to our family of apps. This is how, over the past 9 years, we transformed Momo from a simple single-function application to a multi-billion-dollar company. This relentless focus on innovation and courage to constantly reinvent and transform ourselves will continue to be the way we drive the company forward in the future. Thank you for trusting Momo team and for being part of the journey. Now let me hand the call over to our Chief Executive Officer Wang Li. Mr. Wang, please.
大家好，感谢参加今天的电话会。这是我第一次作为公司的 CEO 参加财报电话会。我将在发言的前半部分为大家回顾运营及业务方面的进展，之后跟大家分享一下我给自己和团队未来几个季度制定的工作重点。
Good morning and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our conference call today. This is my first earnings call as the Chief Executive Officer of the company. I'm going to spend the first part of my speech on reviewing the operational and business updates. After that, I'd like to share some of the priorities that I've set for my teams for the coming few quarters.
首先是财务情况，2020年3季度总营收37.7亿人民币，同比下降15%。收入同比下降的主要原因在于我们当前在陌陌主 App 直播业务中进行的结构性改革，以及部分高额消费者的财务状况受疫情影响，较2019年出现下降。当然，探探的强劲增长部分抵消了来自上述2个因素的压力。 本季度调整后净利润6.54亿人民币，净利润率17%，不包含探探亏损。Momo 主 App 调整后净利润7.21亿人民币，对应利润率24%。三季度在直播及逐渐恢复的会员业务推动下，探探延续了强劲的增长势头，收入达到7.29亿人民币，同比增长135%。即便探探在三季度为促进疫情后的用户恢复，加大了营销支出力度，但强劲的收入增长依旧使我们进一步实现亏损缩窄。本季度探探调整后净亏损6687万人民币，而去年同期亏损额为1.6亿人民币，上季度为7079万人民币。
Firstly, a brief overview of the financial performance. For the third quarter 2020, total revenue was 3.77 billion RMB, down 15% year-over-year. The year-over-year decrease was mainly due to structural reform that we are currently undertaking within Momo course live video business, as well as the fact that the financial condition of some of our high-paying users deteriorated versus 2019 due to the lingering impact from COVID. Of course, the pressure from those two factors were partially offset by the robust growth from Tantan. Adjusted net income for the quarter was 654 million RMB, representing a 17% profit margin. Excluding Tantan's net loss, adjusted income for the core Momo was 721 million RMB, or a 24% profit margin. In Q3, Tantan continued its strong momentum with total revenue reaching 729 million RMB, up 135% on a year-over-year basis, driven by the growth momentum from its live streaming business, as well as the gradual recovery of its membership business. Although Tantan stepped up its marketing spending in Q3 to capitalize on the post-COVID recovery, the strong top-line growth still enabled us to narrow down the loss on the bottom line. Adjusted net loss from Tantan was 66.87 million for the quarter, compared to 160 million RMB for the year-ago period and 70.79 million from last quarter.
接下来具体介绍本季度的其他情况。首先是运营指标 ，Momo 主 App MAU 环比净增210万人，9月达到1.1亿人。疫情好转后，用户持续恢复以及我们在产品和运营方面的努力，是 Momo 主 App 用户规模实现环比增长的主要驱动力。本季度 Momo 付费用户数达到900万人，环比净增10万人。
Now a deeper dive into other aspects of the quarter. First, on operating metrics, number of MAU grew 2.1 million during the quarter to 113.6 million in September. The continuous post-COVID recovery trends, together with our product and operational efforts, were the primary driving forces for the quarterly net add on Momo. Total number of paying users across Momo reached 9 million for the quarter, representing 100,000 net addition from the quarter ago.
接下来说下探探，三季度探探付费用户数410万人，环比净增20万人。季度净增基本反映了疫情过后用户恢复的情况，但部分增长被9月中旬逐渐放量推出的 SVIP 所抵消。SVIP 推出后，原有的看谁喜欢我和闪聊已不再作为增值产品单独出售，而是打包成为 SVIP 的一部分。我们采用的销售策略使新推出的 SVIP 订阅功能相比之前的看谁喜欢我和闪聊实际上产生了提价效果。该策略设计和测试的目标是实现收入最大化，但相应的提价效应在测试期以及上线初期对付费用户数造成了一定的负面影响。如果没有 SVIP 的推出，付费用户数则已经超过了2020年一季度的420万。王宇等下会为大家详细介绍。
Now turning to Tantan. Tantan's paying users for the third quarter totaled 4.1 million, a 200K increase from the previous quarter. The net addition was a general reflection of the post-COVID recovery in user engagement, partially offset by the gradual rollout of SVIP in mid-September timeframe. The merchandising strategy we adopted has resulted in a slight lift in average subscription price for the SVIP as compared with the previous See Who Likes Me and Flash Chat, which were packaged into SVIP and ceased to be offered as separate value-added services after the introduction of SVIP package. Such a strategy was designed and tested to optimize for total revenue, but were negative to the number of paying users when tested and initially launched, due to the pricing list element in it. Without the launch of SVIP, the paying user count could have already exceeded the 4.2 million seen in Q1 2020. Wang Yu will have more details for you later in his remarks.
从三季度中期开始，我们看到获客成本有上升的趋势，原因是一些在线教育及游戏公司在获客方面采取了非常激进的投放策略，推高了整体渠道成本，这导致了陌陌三季度 MAU 和付费用户净增水平略低于二季度，并令探探的用户恢复进程从8月下旬开始有所放缓。目前来看的话，伴随着电商公司的加入，获客环境在4季度可能延续激烈的态势。我们短期的策略是专注于获客 ROI， 并尝试在4季度的营销活动中见机行事。如果12月的渠道获客市场仍竞争激烈，4季度陌陌的用户及付费用户增长趋势则将保持相对平缓。探探方面，叠加 SVIP 4季度持续扩量的效应，付费用户可能会有一定压力。
It's worth calling out that since mid-Q3, we've been seeing an elevating trend in user acquisition costs, specifically with the paid marketing channels, as a result of aggressive marketing investment from some of the online education companies and game publishers. It has caused the net addition in MAU and paying users to be more moderate in Q3 versus Q2 for Momo, and in Tantan's case, slow down the recovery process from late August. Now it looks like that the user acquisition environment might remain competitive in Q4, with e-commerce players joining the battle. Our short-term tactic here is to focus on ROI and try to be opportunistic in how we approach the marketing campaigns in Q4. If the competition for marketing channels remains challenging in December, the user and paying user growth on Momo may continue to be moderate in Q4. Tantan's paying user could be under some pressure because it also has the continuous effect from larger scale SVIP rollout in Q4.
尽管各个方面短期存在挑战，我们仍看到很多机会可以通过产品和运营的努力，实现陌陌旗下各个 App 的增长。这将是公司未来发展的首要任务。我会在发言的后半段详细介绍我们在这方面的观点和计划。
Despite the short-term challenges on the user acquisition side, we still see plenty of opportunities to drive growth through various product and operational efforts across our family of apps. This remains the top priority of the company in the foreseeable future. I will elaborate more on our views and plans in this area in latter part of my speech.
接下来很快介绍下各业务线的情况。首先是直播，2020年3季度直播收入23.7亿人民币，同比下降27%，环比下降9%。环比下降的主要原因在于陌陌主 App 直播业务正在进行结构性改革，其中部分下滑被探探快速增长的直播收入所抵消。王宇稍后会在他的发言中详细介绍，我在这里主要讲陌陌。
Now turning to a quick review across our key business lines. Firstly, on live broadcasting. Total revenue from live broadcasting business for the third quarter 2020 was 2.37 billion RMB, down 27% from the same period last year and 9% from last quarter. The sequential decrease was largely due to the structural reform that we've been undertaking in Momo Core's live streaming business, partially offset by the rapid growth from Tantan's live streaming service. Wang Yu will share more details in his remarks later, so I will be mainly focusing on the core Momo.
陌陌主 App 3季度直播收入19.8亿人民币，同比下降40%，环比下降18%。如大家所知，我们8月初以来采取了一系列措施，目的在于重振长尾内容生态， 并确保直播业务能在新的外部环境下长期实现稳定健康的可持续增长。结构性改革包括一系列的产品和运营方面的举措，涉及到直播业务的很多方面。3季度我们把主要精力集中在3个方面。首先，对那些短期可以刺激头部用户消费，但长期无异于内容生态系统的互动玩法和运营策略进行调整。第二，为繁荣中小直播间内容生态组织了一系列运营活动。第三，调整工会和主播 KPI 考核系统，并重塑赛事设计，由营收导向转向内容导向的运营策略，并为更多新人创造机会。
Momo Core's live streaming revenues totaled 1.98 billion RMB for the third quarter, down 40% from the same period last year and 18% from last quarter. As many of you know, since early August, we have been implementing a series of measures in order to revive the mid to long tail content ecosystem and to make sure that live streaming will continue to grow steadily, healthily, and in a sustainable manner in the new external environment. The structural reform involves a series of product and operational efforts touching many different areas within the live streaming business. In Q3, we mainly focused the efforts on 3 areas. First, making adjustments to certain interactive features and related operational policies that can be a strong stimulator for top spending but may not be beneficial for the content ecosystem. Second, holding a series of promotional events to revive the mid to long tail content ecosystem. And third, redesigning the KPI system for agencies and broadcasters, as well as reinventing the competition events with the purpose to focus less on meeting revenue targets, but more on content and supporting new talents.
我们在8月初对产品进行了调整，正如上个季度财报会中所说，我们判断该调整会在短期内给收入带来比较大的负面影响，但这是去除长期有害于业务健康发展因素至关重要的一步。和预期一致，收入在8月初经历了比较严重的下滑，到8月中旬企稳，且较8月上旬的低谷期出现了初步回暖。这意味着调整计划当中对收入短期负面影响最为剧烈的阶段已经过去。更重要的是，过去几个月中，我们看到内容生态系统已经开始呈现一些初步的改善迹象，这包括收入集中度的降低，以及直播间 DAU、观看时长和职业主播开播时长的稳定上升趋势。这些都是我们用来判断生态系统健康程度的关键量化指标。随着内容生态的逐步改善，我们在10月中旬看到了非赛事日均流水的再次提升，这意味着我们的直播业务已经稳定的步入了生态改善驱动收入恢复的良性轨道。
The product adjustment was made in early August. As we called out in the last earnings call, such adjustment was expected to cause severe short-term pain in revenues, but is critical in getting rid of the bad apples that are harmful for the long-term healthiness of the business. Revenue, as expected, experienced a pretty significant decline during early August. Toward mid-August, we were able to see stabilization and a step up in revenue from the very bottom, which means that the worst of the short-term negative impact from the reform was behind us. More importantly, during the past few months, we have been seeing some positive signs for improvement in content ecosystem, such as a decrease in concentration level and an upward trend in the number of in-channel DAU and their respective viewing time, as well as the total broadcasting time of the professional performers. These are critical metrics for us to gauge the healthiness of the ecosystem. As the content ecosystem gradually improved, in mid-November, we were able to see another meaningful step up in daily revenue during the non-event days. It gave us the confidence that our live streaming business has entered into a virtuous cycle of gradual revenue recovery, supported by a sustainable content ecosystem.
最近几个月，我们的另一项重点工作是在供给端确保高流水主播的稳定性。我们将平台上高营收或者高潜质的核心主播定义为王牌主播，并和他们签订了3年以上的排他性协议。这部分人占Momo平台直播收入70%，对平台供给端稳定性具有决定性的作用。 9月下旬，我们启动了王牌主播续约计划，目标是通过推出新的激励方案，锁定在1-2年之内有合约到期风险的王牌主播。截至上周，我们已经通过多年排查合同，成功锁定了绝大部分的目标主播。同时，我很高兴地看到团队能够优化成本结构，使新方案的增量成本十分可控。张委会在他的发言里为大家详细介绍。
The other important task of ours in recent couple of months is to make sure we have a secured supply of high-grossing broadcasters. For the mid to high-grossing performers and the performers with high potential to become future stars, the platform usually secures these core performers with exclusive contracts called Golden Broadcaster contracts. These Golden Broadcasters represent 70% of Momo's live broadcasting revenues, making them the key to ensure the stableness of our content supply. In late September, we kicked off the Golden Broadcasters contract renewal process. The goal is to lock down the big majority of Golden Broadcasters whose contracts are to expire within 1 to 2 years by offering a new incentive program. Up to last week, we've already secured the big majority of the targeted performers by multiple year exclusive contracts. At the same time, I'm happy that the team are able to optimize the cost structure so that the incremental cost of the new program is quite manageable. John will have more details about this in his remarks.
总的来说，我们会在4季度继续改善内容，目标是年底前在长尾内容生态重塑方面取得实质性的进展，这样明年团队就能专注于收入增长，在2021年内把直播业务带入增长轨道。
Overall, we are well poised for continuous content improvement in Q4. Our goal is to exit this year with solid progress in reshaping the long-tail content ecosystem so that we can focus on driving revenue growth next year and take the live streaming business back to the growth track in 2021.
接下来介绍一下增值业务。3季度 VAS 收入13.3亿元，同比增长25%。王宇稍后会介绍探探，我着重讲陌陌主 App 的增值业务，不包含探探。2020年3季度 VAS 收入9.99亿元，同比增长32%。流量恢复和一些主要付费场景持续的增长势头，推动 VAS 收入环比增长14%。
Now turning to VAS. Revenue from value-added services reached 1.33 billion RMB, up 25% year-over-year. Again, I'll be focusing on Momo's VAS business and leave Tantan's part to Wang Yu a bit later. Revenue from VAS on an ex-Tantan basis reached 999 million RMB for the third quarter of 2020, up 32% year-on-year. On a sequential basis, VAS revenues on the core grew 14%, driven by the continuous recovery of user engagement, as well as the growth momentum from some of the key paying experiences within VAS.
3季度音视频社交娱乐体验持续推动 VAS 强力增长，主要得益于团队在产品和运营方面不断创新。例如好友买卖这种上季度引入聊天室的游戏玩法，保持了良好的增长势头。同时，狼人杀的增长表现也格外突出，主要因为上季度对狼人杀核心体验进行了改造，使其成为3季度 VAS 最大的环比增长引擎。
During the third quarter, the audio and video social entertainment experiences continue to generate robust growth for VAS, driven by innovative product and operational ideas from the team. The new experience we brought into the chat room last quarter, such as Friends Trade, continue to generate momentum. At the same time, Werewolf also grew exceptionally well after we revamped the experience last quarter, making it the biggest sequential growth driver for Q3.
随着整体流量和用户参与度持续回暖，3季度我们在传统礼物里引入了一些礼物创新玩法，例如群组礼物和招呼礼物，有效推动这部分业务的收入实现强劲增长。狼人杀和兴趣群组的收入增长表明，只要我们在用户和付费体验上不断创新，即便是已经非常成熟的场景，也还会有增长机会。4季度我们将在这方面继续尝试。
As the overall traffic and user engagement continue to recover, In Q3, we also introduced a bunch of new gifting experiences into the traditional gifting categories such as interest groups and greetings. As a result, revenues from this bucket grew pretty robustly as well. The growth that we had with werewolf and interest groups shows that even for some of the very mature and established use cases, as long as we continue to innovate on consumer and paying experiences, there is always going to be opportunity to drive growth. We will continue to go down this path in Q4.
接下来很快介绍一下新业务。三季度，赫兹和缘分交友在用户活跃度和收入方面都在逐步提升。另外，我们也在开发一些新的社交体验。这些新业务的近期重点将集中在提升用户体验和留存，在时机合适时才会考虑收入上指标。
Now quickly on the new bucket. In Q3, Hers and matchmaking continue to see gradual improvement, both in terms of user engagement and revenue. In addition, we are also working on a number of other new experiences for the projects in the new bucket. The near-term focus will be on improving user experience and retention. We will push the revenue button at some later stage when we deem fit.
接下来简单介绍一下其他业务线情况。三季度移动营销收入从去年同期的8189万人民币下降至5042万人民币，主要由于宏观经济状况以及我们在策略上主动降低了对该业务线的资源配置。游戏业务三季度持续呈现下滑趋势，今后如果没有需要更新的信息，我们将不再赘述游戏业务。
Now briefly on other business lines. Mobile marketing revenue was 50.42 million RMB, down from 81.89 million RMB the same period last year. The decrease was a reflection of both macro conditions and our strategy to underweight the line in terms of resource allocation this year. Mobile gaming business continued to trend down in Q3 due to its immateriality. We won't be commenting too much on it until we have anything new here.
以上就是业务情况总结。接下来我为大家介绍一下公司未来几个季度的3个重点工作。
These are the business updates. Now I'd like to close my speech today by laying out 3 priorities for the company in the coming few quarters.
我的首要任务是让核心业务重回增长轨道，这次我非常有信心，因为陌陌作为一个社交平台，有非常扎实的基本面。正如大家所见，用户和付费用户在疫情之后都出现了稳步增长，平台坚实的基本面为持续的收入增长提供了保障，增值业务的健康稳定增长就很好的证明了这点。今年最大的挑战是来自疫情对经济的持续影响，以及直播业务调整的短期财务影响。这2个因素影响最严重的阶段已经过去，4季度仍将是一个过渡期，我们会把主要精力集中在改革上，明年将全力推进收入增长。这方面一个重要的方向是对平台的商业化流量统筹管理，并进行精细化运营。我们在 Q3 末进行了一次组织结构调整，将直播业务纳入平台商业产品部统一管理，这样陌陌主平台包括直播、VAS、广告和游戏在内的所有业务线均由统一的部门管理，这为我们最大化流量变现效率铺平了道路。我们会打破直播和 VAS 的流量界限，按照每个用户的喜好提供最吸引他们的体验，这将提升用户的消费意愿，并优化商业化流量的产出效率。
My biggest priority is to take the core business back onto the growth track. I have full confidence here because of the fundamentals of Momo as a social platform are very solid. As you can see from the steady pace of user and paying user growth after COVID. The solid fundamentals of the platform provide a firm foundation for continuous revenue growth on top of it. The healthy and steady growth of VAS business stands as a proof of that. The challenges that we've been seeing this year was largely due to the lingering economic impact from COVID, as well as the structural reform within live streaming business. The worst impact from those 2 factors are already behind us. Q4 will still be a transition period where we largely focus on the reform. Next year, we are going to be fully geared toward revenue growth. One of the key directions here is to more strategically manage the traffic allocation across different monetization efforts on the core. In late Q3, we did a reorganization by putting live streaming business under commercial product team, who is now overseeing all the monetization efforts of the company, including live streaming, VAS, mobile marketing, and gaming. Such an adjustment paves the road for us to maximize the efficiency in monetizing the traffic across the various business lines. We're going to break the barrier between live streaming and VAS and be recommending different experiences to users purely based on the individual preference, which will lead to higher propensity to pay and better ROI in utilizing the traffic for monetization.
第二个重点工作是推动陌陌和探探更紧密的合作，尤其是在获客方面，探探在获客和用户转化方法上还有很大的改善空间。我认为陌陌和探探通过紧密合作能产生很大的协同效应。我的一样重点工作是令这方面的努力在未来几个季度内见到成效。
My next priority is to drive higher level of collaborations between Momo and Tantan, especially on the marketing front. There are still a great deal of opportunities to improve the top of the funnel efforts as well as the conversion methodologies. I'm seeing a lot of synergies that we can drive by enabling closer collaborations between the core and Tantan. Seeing results here is a top priority for me in the coming few quarters.
第三个重点是建立未来5到10年的新增长点。我们现在已经可以清晰地看出，陌陌将成为公司健康稳定增长的现金流业务。与此同时，随着收入规模的日益增长以及利润水平的逐渐改善，探探将成为公司未来3到5年内新的增长引擎。除了陌陌和探探之外，我们看到社交领域仍存在着其他机遇。如果把握得当，这些新机会将成为我们更长期的增长引擎。创新已深深植入陌陌的 DNA。过去2年内，我们在研发新 App 方面吸取了一些教训，但同时也累积了非常宝贵的经验。我希望在未来几年，我们能在这个领域进步得更快。
Third area of focus is to build new drivers for the next 5 to 10 years. It's now very clear that Momo is going to be a healthy and steady growing cash cow business for the company. As Tantan, with revenue becoming increasingly sizable and bottom line continuing to improve, is going to be the new engine for the coming 3 to 5 years. However, beyond Momo and Tantan, we are still seeing opportunities in the social space that, if captured, will become future drivers for a longer-term horizon. Innovation is deeply rooted in Momo's DNA. Over the past 2 years, we have learned lessons, but also accumulated some valuable experience in building new applications. This is an area where I like to see us move a little bit faster in the coming few years.
以上就是这次电话会议我想和大家分享的事情。接下来由王宇为大家介绍探探的情况。
These are the things I like to cover on this call. Now here is Wang Yu to talk about Tantan's product and business development. Mr. Wang, please.
Thanks. So let me briefly review Tantan's operational and business development in the past quarter and our next step plans. First, on user trends and related metrics. Total paying users reached 4.1 million for the quarter, a 200,000 net addition from 3.9 million for the previous quarter. The increase in the number of paying users was a general reflection of the recovery in Tantan's domestic DAUs and user engagement, partially offset by the introduction of SVIP, which is a new subscription package that was getting gradually rolled out in the middle of September. I'm going to elaborate a bit more about this new monetization endeavor and how the dynamics may impact short-term and long-term paying subscribers in different ways a bit later in my remarks. Without the launch of SVIP mid-September, the number of paying users would have already exceeded Q1's level. Now I'd like to echo the early comments from Wang Li about some of the recent trends that we've been seeing in terms of user acquisition. Towards late August, we started seeing a significant increase in user acquisition costs as a result of aggressive marketing spending from some of the education companies and mobile game publishers. As our marketing strategy focuses heavily on ROI, we prefer not to acquire the users when it's heavily overpriced. Our current view is that the user acquisition unit price might remain high in Q4. If that turns out to be the case, our short-term strategy is to time the marketing campaigns opportunistically to avoid unreasonable increase in user acquisition costs. As a result of this short-term strategy, we expect Q4's marketing costs to see a meaningful decrease from Q3's level. And to some extent, that could also affect the pace of sequential revenue growth in Q4. We believe the current high pricing in the channel market is largely due to the fact that the education and gaming companies have been extremely aggressive in seizing the post-COVID market surge. But we think things will ease up after Chinese New Year. We're planning to use that window opportunity to push the marketing button in a bigger way. Meanwhile, we're working to improve our marketing efficiency, and we are confident that we'll see solid results by Chinese New Year. Now, briefly on overseas development. As previously mentioned, we have adopted a strategy to temporarily pull back from the developing countries in Asia and shift the focus to higher ARPU markets. Overseas revenues have been seeing a steady increase since the beginning of the year due to the growth of some of the high ARPU areas that we have entered. However, the number of paying users has trended down as we cut back the spending in developing countries, where users are big but the ARPU is extremely low. Looking beyond Q3, we may delay some of our overseas marketing plans due to the situations around the global pandemic, but overseas expansion remains a critical part of our growth plan over the longer run. Now, briefly on revenues. Total revenues for the third quarter reached 728.9 million, up 135% year-on-year and 41% quarter-on-quarter, driven by the continuous momentum from the live broadcasting business, and to a lesser degree, the post-COVID recovery of the memberships business. Average revenue per paying user, or RPPU, reached 178 RMB in Q3, compared to 69 RMB for the same period last year and 133 RMB last quarter. The substantial increase in RPPU was again primarily driven by the growth of the live streaming business. As said many times before, we believe TangTang still has a great deal of potential in driving ARPU growth. However, in the near term, ramping up the RPPU too fast may not be healthy for the dating ecosystem. Therefore, we'd like to manage the pace of growth a little bit in the coming couple of quarters. Now, let me give you an update on the progresses that we made on a number of other strategic fronts during Q3. First of all, improving product experience. In the third quarter, we continued to push forward on two strategic fronts. One, enhancing the core dating experience, and two, enabling the users to connect and interact in new ways on top of the core swipe and match system. During the quarter, we revamped the core swiping experience with an enhanced card display format. We also redesigned the clicked-in profile page, making the profile picture and other personal information more prominent. In addition, providing a safe and trustworthy environment for users to date always stays on top of our agenda. Verifying the authenticity of the user information is a critical step on that front. Last year, our real photo verification effort has played a very positive role in improving the dating ecosystem and keeping spammers away. This quarter, we took the verification effort a big step forward by beginning to provide real name verification service to the users. Users who have been verified with ID information will be prioritized in our recommendation engine. The initiative has been well received by the users, so we plan to keep pushing on it to increase the adoption rate. On the front of enriching the product experiences, we've now begun a very small-scale testing of a video-audio dating experience. While it's still at an early experimental phase at this point, it represents an important direction that we're moving toward. Of course, perfecting live streaming service is another important endeavor on that front as well. I'm going to elaborate a little bit more in my review of the monetization efforts. Now, turning to business updates. In mid-September, we began to gradually roll out a new subscription package called SVIP. The new package includes some of the popular existing value-added services, items such as See Who Likes Me, Flat Chat, and unlimited right swipes, as well as brand new premium features that, according to test results, can add meaningful value to users. For example, one of these new features gives users access to an advanced filter that could be set to get more desirable recommendations. Another new feature allows the users to customize the privacy setting to address the privacy demand that we see in some of the users. We also give the SVIP subscribers one opportunity per day to directly message someone they are interested in without being matched. On the pricing side, we adopted a dynamic pricing mechanism that some of our peers started adopting a long time ago. After the rollout of SVIP, we ceased to offer See Who Likes Me and Flash Chat as separate value-added service items. Such a replacement and the sprouting strategy collectively led to a de facto price raise effect, which was well expected based on testing results. Price raise effect will cause the SVIP, when launched, to be negative to the number of paying users. As a result, we expect Q4's paying users to decrease from Q3's levels as we roll out SVIP to a larger scale. Our strategy is to, through testing, make sure that the initial launch is positive to the grossing. And for the users who choose not to migrate from the previous subscription to SVIP, we're going to use different pricing wall tactics as well as new added value services to board them back over time. Such a strategy could actually expand rather than limit the headroom for us to grow the paying user base in the future. Now turning to live broadcasting business. In Q3, we focused on optimizing the product and services within the live broadcasting business. Another priority is to make sure that the new service integrates well with the dating ecosystem without causing any unwanted results. So far, we are progressing well on all of those priorities. Now Tantan has been roughly 9 months into live streaming, so it's probably time to share some of my early thoughts about what role it is playing and how I'd like to steer the service and business going forward. Live streaming for Tantan is, of course, a powerful monetization tool. It allows the company to increase ARPU and make the financial model work so we have bigger leverage to grow the user scale and keep investing for future drivers. At the same time, live streaming is also a consumer experience. In that respect, our main goal is to make live streaming a complementary service to the core dating experience and contribute positively to user engagement. The key to that goal is to stick to the social attributes of this consumer experience. In order to achieve that goal, we need to carefully pace its development as a monetization feature to avoid going top-heavy too fast. Tantan's paying structure right now is still very long-tail driven. Showrooms are small but very interactive, which is critical in making live streaming a gratifying user social experience. We would like to keep it that way in order to best leverage the advantage of Tantan as a social platform. Those are the key things that I'd like to cover for today. Now let me pass the call over to Mr. Jonathan Zhang for a financial review. John, please.
Thanks. Hi everyone, thank you for joining our conference call today. Let me briefly take you through the financial review. Total revenue for the third quarter 2020 was 3.77 billion RMB, down 15% year-on-year, or 3% quarter-over-quarter. Non-GAAP net income attributable to Momo was 653.8 million RMB compared to 1.09 billion RMB from the same period of 2019, or a 40% decrease year-over-year. As the revenue lines have been covered comprehensively by Wang Li and Wang Yu earlier, let me just jump into the cost and expenses items directly. Our non-GAAP cost of revenue for the third quarter of 2020 was 2.0 billion RMB compared to 2.18 billion for the same period last year. The non-GAAP cost of revenue as a percentage of total revenue was 53%, an increase from 49% from Q3 last year. Non-GAAP gross profit margin for the quarter was down 4 percentage points from a year ago. The decrease was attributable to the following 4 factors in the order of magnitude of their respective impact. Number 1, higher payout ratio from live streaming business due to the promotional events that we held to revive mid to long tail content ecosystem, the incentive program that we offered to golden broadcasters to stabilize our content supply, and higher revenue contribution from agencies, represented broadcasters. Number 2, higher payout ratio from VAS services due to the strong momentum coming from the audio and video social entertainment business, a big part of which involved third-party professional moderators. Number 3, lower gross margin from Tantan as its live broadcasting business is becoming increasingly sizable. And number 4, certain fixed nature cost items such as headcount and depreciation of fixed assets related impacted the gross margin negatively as the total revenue declined, and these items represent a higher percentage of total net revenue. On a sequential basis, the non-GAAP gross margin dipped by 1 percentage point, better than we originally expected. One thing worth mentioning here is that, as Mr. Wang Li said, in September we started a program to renew the exclusive multi-year contracts of golden broadcasters by offering an additional incentive to revenue sharing. The incremental cost incurred was partially offset by reduction of subsidies for operational events in Q3. We expect the ongoing gross margin impact from the contract renewal program to be from 1 to 2 percentage points. Together with the bonus we have budgeted for the year-end gala, the gross margin in Q4 is expected to be down a couple of percentage points from Q3 level. Non-GAAP R&D expenses for the third quarter was 252.3 million RMB, relatively flat compared to 254 million RMB for the same period last year, representing 6.7% and 5.7% of total revenue respectively. The increase in R&D expenses as a percentage of revenue was mainly due to the decrease in revenue. We ended the quarter with 2,396 total employees, of which 760 are from Tantan. The R&D personnel as a percentage of total employees for the group was 58%, compared with 54% Q3 last year. Non-GAAP sales and marketing expenses for the third quarter was 696 million RMB, or 18.5% of total revenue, compared to 701.7 million RMB, or 15.8% of total revenue for the same period last year. The year-over-year decrease in sales and marketing expenses was mainly due to the lower marketing spending from Momo, which was partially offset by higher spending from Tantan. On a sequential basis, the non-GAAP sales and marketing expenses as a percentage of revenue was up 3.2%. The increase was attributable to our step-up user acquisition efforts for Momo and Tantan to capitalize the post-COVID recovery. Non-GAAP G&A expenses was 105.8 million RMB for the third quarter 2020, compared to 150.4 million RMB for the same quarter last year, representing 2.8% and 3.4% of total net revenue respectively. The year-on-year decrease in G&A expenses was mainly due to the reduction of service costs related to our experimental project Zao launched last year, and less bonus accrual during the third quarter 2020. The non-GAAP operating income was 737.6 million RMB, a decrease of 38% from Q3 2019, representing 19.6% non-GAAP operating margin for the quarter, down 7 percentage points from the same period last year. For the interest of timing, lastly, let me talk about the business outlook. We estimated our fourth quarter revenue to come in the range of 3.65 billion RMB to 3.75 billion RMB, representing a decrease of 22.1% to 20% year-on-year, and a decrease of 3.1% to 0.4% quarter-over-quarter. Such estimation is based on the assumptions that Momo core revenue will be slightly down from Q3 level. There are two things worth mentioning here. Firstly, although the daily grossing during the non-event days have been stabilized and meaningfully improved from the bottom seen in early August, July as a pre-restructuring month set a high base for Q4. Secondly, Q4 is still a transition period where the focus is still on the content ecosystem. As a result, we adopting a conservative principle for running the year-end competition events by not setting KPIs for the team in terms of revenue that comes out of it. Therefore, we expect the incremental revenues from the upcoming year-end gala to be much less comparing to that in the previous year. Given these two factors, we expect Momo's live broadcasting revenue to decrease slightly from Q3 level. Obviously, it is going to be partially offset by the continuous growth from our VAS services. We also expect Tantan's revenue growth will be impacted by the following two factors. Number one, as mentioned earlier, the temporary intense competition in the marketing channels has put some pressure on new user acquisition and paying user growth. Number two, Tantan team is purposely managing the cadence of RP pool expansion in live streaming services at current stage in order to make sure there's nothing negative to impact the dating ecosystem. Please be mindful that the forecast represents the company's current and preliminary view on the market and operational conditions, which are subject to change. That concludes our prepared portion of today's discussion. With that, let me turn the call back to Kathy to start the Q&A. Kathy, please.
Actually, just quick reminder for those who can speak Chinese, please ask the question in Chinese first, followed by English translation. And also, please limit the number of questions to 1 or 2. With that, operator, ready for questions.
Thank you. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we'll now begin the question and answer session. And for your questions, please press star and the number 1 and wait for your name to be announced. To cancel the request, it is the pound or hash key. Once again, for questions, please press star and the number 1 on your telephone keypads. First question comes from the line of Thomas Chong of Jefferies. Please go ahead.
晚上好，谢谢管理层接受我的提问。我有2个问题。第一个问题是关于Momo 那边的。看到11月份呢，我们的收入呢也开始pick up。想问一下，就是从阿普的角度来说，尤其是从高付费的用户来说呢，我们看到有什么的一个趋势了？然后再想问一下，看Core Momo 那边，尤其是直播那边，看2021年收入的展望，可以分享一下吗？我第二个问题呢是关于探探的，如果是看2021年的话呢，从直播的收入还有就是会员的收入的话，现在会不会有什么 color 可以分享的？I have 2 questions. Thanks management for taking my questions. I have two questions. My first question is about the update on ARPU recovery trend among the high-paying users up to November, and how we should think about the initial revenue outlook in 2021. And my second question is on Tantan. Can management also comment about the live streaming revenue versus the membership trend in 2021? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问那这次我们直播生态调整呢，在初期确实会对某些高额付费用户呢产生一定的负面影响。那我们希望这样的一个短期代价来去除掉我们系统当中一些对生态健康长期不利的东西。同时呢，逐渐改变头部集中的模式，也有利于增强整体业务在新的政策环境下的一个安全度，从而保证陌陌直播在未来几年内能够有一个稳定而健康的成长。那以过去的几个月数据来看，我们在这个目标的执行上取得了非常好的效果。那由于管理层的决心和团队的坚持，我们成功的革除了原来生态系统当中一些弊端。另外，我们非常关注的一些生态指标例如 DAU 相应的观看时长以及职业主播的开播时长进入11月都有了一个明显向好的趋势。同时，截止到目前为止，团队已经基本上完成了王牌主播的续约任务，以一个非常小的这个成本代价，成功的用3年以上的王牌合约锁定了绝大部分1-2年内有到期风险的核心主播。那这是稳固我们内容生态很关键的一个成果，为陌陌直播未来几年的平稳健康增长奠定了坚实的供给端基础。
Okay, let me translate the first part first. The structural reform that we are currently implementing within the live streaming business at the very beginning indeed had some negative impact on the spending from the high-paying users. We're hoping that by taking this short-term pain, we could remove some of the bad stuff from the system that is going to be harmful for the content ecosystem over the long term. At the same time, gradually changing a very top-heavy sort of model is also going to increase the safety level of our overall business structure in the new policy environment. And this is to make sure that Momo's live broadcasting business is going to grow healthily and steadily in the future several years. If you look at the data over the past several months, we can say with confidence that we are progressing very well in executing that goal. Because of management's commitment and the persistence from the team, we've successfully eradicated the bad apples from the system. And the other thing is that if you look at the metrics reflecting the healthiness of the content ecosystem, things like DAU, their respective time spent, and also their respective viewing time, and also the total broadcasting time of the professional performers, as we entered into November, all of these metrics have been showing very positive trends. At the same time, so far the team has largely completed the contract renewal process with the Golden Broadcasters with a pretty manageable incremental cost. We've successfully locked down the big majority of the broadcasters whose contracts are set to expire in the coming couple of years, and the renewed contracts are going to cover another at least 3 years. This is a very critical step in solidifying the content ecosystem, which provides a solid foundation on the supply end for Momo's live streaming business to grow healthily and steadily over the future several years.
那现在讲一下投资人最关心的事情。那在收入的恢复方面我目前非赛事日的日均流水比8月初的谷底呢，已经稳定提升了3到400万每天，分别是在8月中旬以及10月中旬看到2次明显的上升。那这也是生态逐步恢复的结果。我们预计 Q4 的活动日之外的日常流水应该会维持在这个水平。当然盛典会带来一些营收增量，但整个团队 Q4 的工作主要集中在产品调整后续的一些生态恢复和改善方面，收入呢不会是 Q4 的重点。那今年的盛典也遵循了同样的原则，不会做硬性的收入开篇，当然这种保守型的策略也反映在了我们的指引当中。
Now on the things that you guys are probably most concerned about, the revenue recovery. If you look at the average daily grossing on non-event days, and compare that data with what we saw in early August when things were at the bottom, we are seeing a pretty stable 3 to 4 million renminbi per day increase between the two time spots, and the increase came in two separate step-ups, one seen in mid-August timeframe, and the other one seen in mid-November timeframe. That's a reflection of gradual recovery in the content ecosystem. We currently expect that the average grossing during non-event days to sort of remain at that level. Of course, the year-end competition events is going to bring in some incremental revenues, but as I said, the focus for the whole team in Q4 is going to be on the content. After taking that big surgery on the product side, revenue is actually not one of the things on the priority list. And that same principle also applies in running the competition, year-end competition event, in that we're not setting rigid KPIs for the team. And that conservative strategy has also been reflected in the guidance.
那么现在谈这个2021年呢，为时尚早但我可以分享一些趋势性的看法。那首先，Momo的直播方面明年预计生态调整可以顺利完成我们也会把工作重心转移到恢复增长上来。除了 Q1 传统的季节性波动我们有信心能够令收入在 Q4 的基础上再稳步增长。
For Momo's library, now it's a little bit too early to talk about the outlook for 2021, but big picture-wise, here are some trends that I can share. For Momo's live broadcasting business, I think we are going to complete a whole transition period in connection with the structural reform by the end of this year. So next year, we're going to be shifting the focus more toward growing the revenues. I think other than the traditional seasonal fluctuations that we're going to see in Q1, I'm confident that revenue will see a steady improvement from Q4's level.
另外，Momo的 VAS 在今年运营方面呢，仍然比较克制目前看，无论是聊天室还是一些正在测试的新付费体验，明年都会有一个持续稳定的增长机会。
For Momo's VAS business, I think this year overall the team has been rather disciplined in running different operational efforts to drive revenue. At this point, we're also seeing very steady growth opportunities on the chat room experience, and we are also testing a few new paying experiences as well. So I think that next year this is going to be an area where we're going to see a pretty solid continuous growth.
另外呢，探探今年 Q2 以来营收一直是一个强劲增长的态势那么 Q4 预计增长呢暂时有所放缓的主要有两个方面的因素一个是团队本身呢出于生态的考量，希望控制一下商业化，特别是 ARPU 增长的节奏。那另外一方面呢是由于Q4 获客市场的竞争会给新增以及付费用户增长带来一些压力。但即便是这样年度同比来看的话，探探 Q4 仍然会有 90% 左右的一个增长。那这个增速我认为在探探目前的发展阶段呢是比较合适的。从生态角度来说的话也是比较稳健。那么进入明年毫无疑问，探探的用户仍然会持续增长 ，ARPU 也会持续提升。那么收入比2020年还是会有高速增长，也仍然会是整个集团一个重要的收入引擎。
For Tantan, as you guys can see, since Q2 this year, Tantan's revenue has been growing very, very strongly. The temporary slowdown in Q4 is mainly due to two factors. One is due to considerations around keeping the content ecosystem safe. The team purposely wants to control the pace of monetization a little bit, especially the ramp up of ARPU. And the other factor is that the intensive competition in the user acquisition market in Q4, specifically that the high pricing in the per user acquisition cost is indeed putting some pressure on the growth of new registrations as well as the growth of the paying users. However, if you take a year-over-year sort of perspective, in Q4, Tantan will still be growing at 90-something% versus same period last year. That sort of growth rate is a pretty satisfactory level given the current stage of development of Tantan, and that is also a safe and prudent sort of growth rate in keeping the dating ecosystem healthy. As we move into next year, there is no doubt that Tantan is going to continue to grow its user base and improve its ARPU. So I think revenue is still going to see very rapid growth as compared with the year 2020, and Tantan is still going to be a very important revenue growth engine for the whole group.
最后明年我们还有另外一个目标啊，同时也是未来长期的一个趋势，就是 VAS 收入对直播收入的比例呢会持续的显著的提升。2019年这个比例大概只有3成啊，今年应该在4到5成之间。那目前我们看到陌陌在社交领域提供增值服务的增长潜力显然是比直播要大的。我的目标是在2021年令 VAS 对直播的比例增长到6成到7成之间。那么这样的话，整个公司的一个业务结构会达到一个非常稳定的状态啊，抗风险能力也会加强。我认为陌陌作为一个社交公司，收入本来也应该是这样的一个结构。
And lastly from me, we have another key objective for next year, which is also going to be a long-term trend that we're going to see happening on the company's level, and that is the VAS to live streaming revenue ratio is going to see continuous increase in a pretty meaningful way. I think that ratio in the year 2019 was somewhere around 30%. This year, depending on which quarter, it's going to be 40 to 50%. At this point, we're definitely seeing more growth potential in offering richer value-added services in the social space versus in the live streaming space. My goal is that in 2021, the VAS to live broadcasting revenue ratio should grow to above 60% to closer to 70%. That way, the overall revenue, the overall business structure of the company is going to reach a pretty safe and stable state, and that is also going to be more resilient and defensive against the external risks. And that is also the right sort of revenue structure for Momo as a social company. I think there's a second question about the revenue outlook for Tantan specifically, between live streaming and VAS. Andrew is wrong about it.
Okay, so regarding the revenue outlook, we haven't started the budgeting process for the period beyond Q4 yet, so it's too early to share anything too specific. But here are some of the drivers that we're looking at. First of all, the users are going to continue to grow versus this year, and that will translate into paying user growth. We do not guide on user and paying user growth, but I'm confident that it will be meaningful against this year as COVID gets behind and with the efforts in improving the product and marketing efficiency. Second, next year on the VAS side, we're going to continue to optimize SVIP. Currently, we also have a few other membership features that we're testing and targeted to launch next year. One thing about next year is that we are looking to build a new monetization feature around video dating experiences, and that we're just currently testing. The new monetization will be a la carte model, so if we're successful, we can be a meaningful ARPU driver as well. Thirdly, on live streaming, in the second half of this year, we largely focused on improving the product experience. Currently, I feel that we still have a lot of areas that need to be improved. For example, the recommendation engine, the in-channel experience, and the way live video is connected to core products. So we've been holding back on the RPPU-driven efforts since September. As we improve the overall user experience with live video, we're certain going to pull some of the revenue levers next year. So overall, I think both paying users and our people will see very meaningful growth in 2021. Thank you.
Operator, please get to the next.
Yes, thank you. Next question is from the line of Tian Hall of TH Capital. Please go ahead.
管理层晚上好，唐总祝你新的 venture successful。那王总呢，以后可能我们就要经常给你问题了。那我先提2个问题。那第一个呢，就是陌陌呢和Match Group 听着特别相似，大家都把它2个一起来对比，但是看一下他们今年的走势就特别不一样。所以我就是在想，管理层是怎么看我们自己在中国这个环境之下， 的一个未来的成长空间。就我们中国这个领土，中国这个文化，就是在哪些方面我们可以更加的去挖掘，然后让我们的这个就是我们这个天花板更高一些。那管理层对今后这个5到10年的一个战略是什么？是我们要继续深挖这个陌生人社交呢，还是说我们要拓展一些新的领域？现在有很多这个做直播的公司，不管他是做什么直播的，好像都进入了很多新的领域。我不知道公司在这方面是有什么考虑。再有一个相关的问题，就是就是跟未来的战略相关的。我们现在大量的这个现金在我们账上，这些现金如何能够配合我们实现我们未来的一个战略？那我就快点翻译一下哈。So lots of guys compare Momo with Match Group or Tinder. However, if we look at how they grow during the COVID, seems like there is a big diversion. So I wonder in China, in the Chinese cultural environment, what is the best way to grow, the dating and social networking business, and what is the ceiling? How big the market can be. Also, what's the company's strategy for next 5 to 10 years? Are you guys going to continue? To operate in the dating market, or are you going to bring the live broadcasting to the new area, such as e-commerce, like a lot of other live broadcasting vendors are doing? Also related to the next several years strategy, you guys have a lot of net cash. How are you going to use the cash to advance your strategy? Thank you. That's all my question. 就这2个问题，王总。
好，那谢谢您的提问。那关于第一个问题是这样的，那首先我们认为中国的开放式社交以及约会市场呢还有很大的增长空间。那根据官方统计机构的一个数据呢，中国有2到3亿的这样的一个单身的成年人口。那目前看到一些新趋势比如说结婚年龄的推迟高离婚率，那年轻一代对于网络交友的这样的一个接受度和依赖度都在提高。那这些变化呢都会导致我们的目标人群需求不断的扩大，而中国目前的一个经济发展和互联网消费水平的发展，决定了陌生人交友和约会的商业化以及利润空间是非常巨大的。Momo和探探在这个开放式社交市场呢，具有互补性很强的不同定位都会从这个不断增长的市场需求中获益。另外除了Momo和探探之外呢，围绕社交和娱乐，我们也在积极拓展其他创意项目。Momo团队在这方面的实力呢是被证明过的对于这样的一个产品组合的长期增长空间，我们非常有信心。
First of all, we believe there are still huge growth potential in China's open social space and the general dating market. According to some official statistics that I've seen, in China we have from 200 to 300 million single adult population. Right now we are also seeing some new rising trends. For example, the delayed time for marriage, the rising divorce rates, and also the fact that the younger generation are becoming increasingly receptive toward the idea of online dating. And we are also actually seeing an increasing dependence on the online dating services. All of these will lead to a continuous expansion in our addressable market. With the current status of China's economic development and the overall consumption power of China's mobile internet population, I think open social business and the dating business should have huge potential for monetization and profitability. Momo and Tantan, we are all playing in that open social space with different but very complementary positioning. So we are all going to be benefiting from that growing market demand. Other than Momo and Tantan, we are also actively pursuing the growth opportunities via new applications in the social and entertainment space. Momo's team has proven capabilities in product innovation. So overall, I'm extremely confident in the long-term growth potential for such a product portfolio approach.
那么具体到Momo这个 app 的增长预期， 那么通过这次疫情，陌陌流量的恢复情况呢，可以看出，我们的社交基本盘呢非常的稳定，但同时陌陌也是一个相对成熟的社交品牌，所以在用户增长方面，我们会采取一个稳中求涨的策略。目前我们在低线城市渗透方面还看到一些明显的机会，但今年呢，在这方面的很多计划由于地方的这样的一个疫情限制措施呢有所延误，明年呢我们还是会在这方面继续推进。在用户稳中求涨的同时呢，在商业化上团队会更加深耕细作。我认为陌陌在这方面还有很大的提升空间，特别是在商业化流量的使用效率上，我们需要更加精细化的运作。以前由于组织结构导致的那种 live 直播各自为政的一个方式呢，也造成了很大的流量浪费明年我们会打破这种方式，对商业化流量进行 ROI 导向的一个统筹安排。相信陌陌仍然会有稳定的增长，并可以为集团提供一个长期稳定的利润和现金流的保障。
More specifically about the growth outlook for the Momo application, I think through how quickly the traffic of Momo recovered from the COVID, we can actually see that the fundamentals of the social platform is very, very solid. But at the same time, Momo is also a long-standing and mature, relatively mature social brand. So when we talk about user growth, we need to seek growth opportunities and try to build growth on top of a pretty stable user base. At this point, we are still seeing pretty evident growth opportunities in penetrating into lower tier cities. But unfortunately, this year, a lot of our plans on that front got stuck in the system due to restrictions in different geolocations to keep the virus under control. But next year, I think we're going to continue to push forward on that front. Besides user growth, the team is also going to continue to push harder and go deeper on the monetization side. I actually am still seeing a great deal of potential on that front for Momo, for the core, especially in better utilizing the commercial traffic. I think what we need to do here is to be doing things more strategically and try to build a holistic traffic management system that goes across different business lines, including VAS and live streaming. Previously, because of the organizational structure that we had in the past, sometimes we could be putting in artificial barriers between VAS and live streaming that blocked traffic from flowing from one line to another. That actually led to significantly lower ROI utilizing the commercial traffic. Next year, with the new org structure, we're going to break that sort of system and be adopting a pure ROI-driven approach to allocate the commercial traffic in between different lines. We believe that Momo is going to continue to grow steadily and can also be very solid long-term contributor to the bottom line and to the cash flow of the group.
那么至于探探方面呢，无论从品牌的一个年轻度呢，还是产品机制方面都面临一个比陌陌更大的增长空间。我们认为探探在中国的用户体量在现在基础上至少可以翻倍甚至更大。那在此之外呢，探探在海外也会有非常广阔的收入市场。那当然呢，团队需要为这些增长机会付出艰苦的努力。那我们也有信心通过产品和获客两方面的不断提升去实现这些目标。
Tantan, its brand name is much younger, and its product mechanism is also more geared toward young people in China. So we do believe that as compared with Momo, Tantan is facing greater growth opportunities in growing its user base. We believe that in China alone, Tantan should be able to at least double the size of its user base from where it is right now, or it can be potentially much bigger than that. Beyond China, Tantan is also facing a very good revenue TAM in the overseas market, but of course the team needs to be working very hard toward these goals. We are confident that through improvements on the product side and improvements on the user acquisition side, we're going to continue to approach these targets. So that's the answers to the first question.
那关于第二个问题的话，那么公司有接近160亿人民币的现金储备并且还在快速增长之中 那除了通过分红和回购来回馈股东之外呢，那对于资本分配最主要的考量之一呢，就是通过好的并购来巩固公司的领导地位，并且创造新的增长机会。那公司在并购方面的分析评估相对比较谨慎但如果有像探探这样的机会呢，我们也会毫不犹豫的出手。
You are right in saying that we have a lot of cash. Currently, the company has, I think, close to 16 billion renminbi in cash sitting on the balance sheet, and that number is still rapidly growing. Other than returning cash to the shareholders in the form of dividends and share buybacks, in terms of capital allocation, one of the other things that we are considering is, of course, the M&A opportunities that can strengthen the company's leadership and build future drivers. I would say that on the M&A front, the company's approach tend to be fairly prudent in analyzing and evaluating any potential targets. But if we do see opportunities as promising as Tantan, we are going to go in very aggressively without hesitation.
Thank you, Wang Zhou. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay. It seems like this call has overrun pretty significantly. Operator, in the interest of time, I think this is going to be the end of this conference call. Thank you guys for participating, and thank you for the interest in Momo and Tantan. We'll see you next quarter. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the conference for today. Thank you for participating. You may now all disconnect.